welcome back to Belle's Only Corner. Today we're going to jump into episode 2 of our play season, where we're going to be starting for the next, my guess is 4 episodes, but we'll see how we go. We're going to start and chat through the kind of stages of play. So if you haven't had a listen to last week's episode, it's been a little while. It's been a crazy start to the year. If you haven't listened to episode 1, jump back and have a listen to that, because that's where we kind of talk through an overview of what play is, and I very quickly went into kind of some of the stages of play from that social perspective and also from that kind of type of play that it is as well. And so that will be really helpful to then kind of lead into today's episode. But what we're going to be chatting through over the next kind of 4 episodes is I'm going to group some of those types of play with some of those social play elements, so that we can look at the kind of progression of play that we see some of our children go through, from both the what the play looks like and also how we can interact with that child as they're exploring that play. And so we're going to start from the beginning and we're going to work our way through. Now, I might refer to some age ranges as we do this, but they are just a guide. All of our children will progress at different stages, and as always, if you do have concerns about your child's development or concerns about a child in your class, that's where you talk to the teacher. That's where you can chat to the parents, and as parents, if you have concerns, that's where you can reach out to your occupational therapist, and they'll be able to give you those guidance on your child in particular. This podcast, as always, aims to just give you some extra information so you can feel confident when you're, watching your kid and understanding, oh, I know why they're doing that activity. I can play with them like that. And also through this season, I really want to just bring some more ideas to you, because play can be hard. As adults, my favorite question to ask parents is, when is the last time you played? And they look at me and they go, I'm an adult. I don't play. Well, I would argue adults do play, but it looks different. And so when we then need to look at when was the last time you played as a child, for many adults, that's over a decade ago, if not longer. And so it's a really hard skill to then be able to pull out. So over the next kind of 4 or 5 episodes, we're really going to hopefully give you lots of different ideas of different games and different ways we can play and interact with the young people in our lives. So today, we're going to be talking through solitary play and sensorimotor play, what these are, what they can look like, and what are some games and things that we can play. But also looking at why are they important? What are some of the skills that this child is developing, exploring, and building in this stage of play? Because the one thing that we need to remember as we talk about play is what we refer to as a child's primary occupation. It is what they spend most of their day doing, and it is how they learn. Children learn through play, and that can be learning about anything from themselves, how I can relate to something else, how I can relate to another person, how I can manage the dynamics of me and this person to then be able to make something over there happen. So if we're building a tower together, for example, I need to figure out what I need to do with my body and how I can interact with you to then figure out how we can make a plan to build this tower together. So there's lots and lots of learning that goes on. So as we chat through today, we'll also chat through what some of those things are that children are learning and exploring in these stages of play. So today is going to be solitary and sensorimotor play. Now, when we think about solitary play, this is where children can seem like they're uninterested in other people, and they're only really interested in the thing that I'm playing with, what I've got, particularly if I'm exploring something. So it's where you might see these elements of concentration, and they're picking something up and turning it over and looking at it, and you might say, oh wow, that's interesting, and they just don't even register that you're there. They're really quite focused on what they're doing. And this is when we're learning about objects and what they are, what they look like, if they can, what they do, our sensory development. And this is from our physical sensory development, but also just figuring out what our senses can do, which leads us into that sensorimotor play. So sensorimotor play at its core is all about play or activities that look at exploring our senses and how I work in the world around me. And this impacts on everything from figuring out all of my proprioception, so where my body is in space and what my body can do, and starting to build some of those early gross motor skills, looking at, what things feel like and touch like, looking at putting things in my mouth and what they feel like, and building up that oral sense. It's huge. There is so much learning that goes on, looking at different lights and sounds, listening to different sounds, looking at different lights, looking at different colors, all of these really sensory rich activities that are so important to help us foster this idea of where I am in space and what's going on in the world around me. So when we think about why, what are we looking at in terms of the other thing with our sensorimotor play is it looks at combining our senses and our movement. And we know that movement is one of our senses. And if you're unsure, go back to our sensory season and have a listen to proprioception and vestibular episodes in particular. But it looks at how we can combine all this information. And it's this idea at the really early stages of, I hear a sound over there and I'm going to turn myself around to have a look and see what that sound was. So I'm starting to put together, I hear something come in and I can have a response, and I can use my body to turn, to roll, to pick something up in response to the senses in the world around me as well. So when we think about our sensorimotor play, it is our really, really early stage of play. And our solitary play is also our really, really early stages of play. It's where I'm just figuring out me and what's going on in my body, and then I might start to figure out some other objects and things around me as well. So if we think about babies and what they can develop in this stage, if we think about some of these really early skills, our play can look like a baby lying on their back and lifting their arms up to touch something and watch it move, or just lift their arm up and watch their arm. It could be starting to reach for things. It could be watching, reaching for something and knocking it off the table and just thinking that was hysterical. And then he gets put back on the table and then, I'm going to knock it off again. And hey, that's funny. It can be things like where we look at building some of those early motor skills. So if you think back to our motor season, it's where we might start to figure out, I can use my tummy. And I can start to figure out where my tummy is and what that is and how I'm going to kind of sit my body up. And then it gets hard and I flop down again. Or it could be that, I start to figure out my rolling and coming one side to the other side. I start to get this bit of postural awareness because it's motivating to do so. So my play at this stage could be I'm lying on my back and you're rattling a toy over there. And so I'm kind of looking and I'm rolling over to try and get it because that's really motivating for me. And that's really playful and fun. It's where we start to build up some of those early postural skills, particularly if we think about like tummy time and getting all of those extensors through our back, because as soon as we're on our tummy, we're stuck. And so the only way I'm going to be able to interact with the world is if I first lift my head up. Oh, there's some early extensors. And then maybe as I get a bit stronger, I'll lift up through my back. And then, I can look at the world around me and I can bring myself up and start to explore more of that world. Maybe as I get a bit older, I'll have a mat in front of me and there's things that I can bang or things that I can scrunch and grab. And I start to build some of those early fine motor skills. So you can see in this stage, a lot of our play is around activities that are going to foster and support a little bit of this movement, a little bit this figuring out where my body is in space and what it can do. And so thinking about tummy time quickly, because it's something that I know, it's so important and there's lots of reasons I could tell you about why it's so important, but I also know it's something that a lot of families can struggle to find the time for, or it can be a really tricky one because they've got other kids running around the house. And so tummy time doesn't always have to be on the floor. Tummy time is times when your child is in prone or their tummy is down against something and they're having to use those muscles and lift themselves up. So that could be on the floor. It also could be on your chest. And so it could be when you're sitting and leaning back against the couch and your Bubs has just had a feed or Bubs has just woken up and you're having a bit of a play. Actually just sitting down against your chest and then lifting up and looking at you, that's tummy time. Maybe you have a little exercise ball and, Bubs likes rolling over the exercise ball and doing that on their tummy. Hey, that's tummy time too. So it's just about thinking about how we can use those times when you're already naturally in a position and it's really easy to pop bubs on their tummy. And then, for example, if they're on your chest and they're then looking up at you and going, hey, you're really quite interesting, that's where we can then start to have some really big facial expressions, what we call affect. So we're going to bring our face up. I'm going to be smiling. I might be making noises. I might be going and just doing all these silly things, because the bigger I can make it on my face, the more of an intense cue it is for my little kitty, the easier it is for them to pick it up. And I'm going to use my eyebrows, and I might be making, oh, hello, and using really high voice. All of these things are going to help to keep it motivating for this little kid to then be using all of those muscles to bring themselves up. If your child really struggles with tummy time, or maybe you have an older kid and someone's recommended actually doing some things in prone on their tummies will be really good to help build some strength, and they find it really hard, you can look at things like putting a towel, just rolling up a towel and lying over that, so that they only have to do a little bit of the work and not all of the work themselves. And there's lots of ways that you can look at adapting it as well to make it a little bit easier for your child. But just to kind of keep in the back of your mind that that's why we think tummy time, and that's why so many people will say, oh, tummy time's so important, but it doesn't always have to be on the floor. There's lots of ways that we can adapt that as well. So back to our sensory motor play and what this can look like. So as we said, it's this area of exploring our bodies, figuring out what they can do. And initially, all of these movements are going to look quite uncoordinated and like they don't really have a purpose. Because to adults and to us, they can look really unpurposeful. But to the child, they've got so much purpose of, hey, I'm figuring out where my body is and what it can do. And, the days when kids find their feet and all of a sudden their feet go in their mouths and they're just the most exciting things. All of that stuff counts as bits in this play as well. And then as we see our kids get older, what they're doing within the play changes slightly. And so we might see that they start to stand and pull themselves up. They might start to weight bear and do some crawling, or they're reaching for toys while they're lying on their tummy. It might be where you start to see interest in foods and squishing foods and feeling different textures. So they're starting to investigate those textures, the size, the shapes of different objects. They're holding some of those easy grasp things and maybe starting to drop them, or just holding them and shaking them around and listening to those sounds. And so you can see it starts to become a little bit more purposeful in some of the exploring that we're doing. But it's still very much based in figuring out how I can control my body and how I can use purposeful movement to start to explore some of the things in the world around me. And then as we continue to progress through, we'll see even more sort of development in our skills, and things will become even more refined as kids might be able to start to use, I might start with just pulling everything towards me, and then I'm holding it with a bit of a palmar grasp. I'm using all of my fingers and holding it right next to my palm. And then maybe I start to experience and figure out, hey, I've got fingers and I can use my fingers to pick something up with more of a pincer grasp as well. But we need those progressions before I can figure out what those movements can do. So you can see why this is also called that sort of solitary play, because it's all about the child figuring out themselves. And unfortunately, we can't just tell them, this is your arm and this is your hand and this is your, they don't understand that. And so we need to allow them to explore their bodies and experience these things and figure them out for themselves by setting up activities and doing play that's going to help and foster a bit of this exploration. And they're naturally going to want to do it anyway. But I think where a lot of parents I've worked with can get really stuck is like, oh, they're just rolling around. I'll just leave them, or, they're really cute and we, cuddle and do all these stuff. But what's the play? How can I build the relationship? How can I interact? So that's what we're going to talk about now. Now that we have a bit of an understanding of the why, what is the sensory motor play? Why is that important? Let's talk about that social side and what the play can look like and what you can do. So in this early stages of play, I'm just going to chat through some of my favorite sort of play activities to do. And one of them is nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are fantastic because they do so much in terms of affect. And affect is how I'm showing you, and I'm using my voice and my body and my face to be fun and engaging, but also from a sensory perspective, I'm giving you lots of input from sound and visual stimuli and touch as well. And so if we think about our nursery rhymes, we can make ourselves really big and be really silly with our nursery rhymes, or we can make ourselves really funny, or we can make ourselves really calming. There's lots that we can do, but we can use our voice and our bodies to help facilitate that. And then we can look at ones where we can actually bring in a bit of movement to it as well. So maybe I have Bubs sitting against my knees, for example, and my knees are bent, and we're doing a row, row, row your boat. And maybe as we're rowing, I'm leaning backwards and then Babs is following, and then we're rocking back and forth together in time with the music. So we're getting this, extra bit of input. Bubs is having fun, their body's moving with some music. It's silly, it's playful. And then, we can go all the way down, and then we're going to do a big tickle at the end, or a big cuddle at the end, or whatever it might be that you find likes best. But using your body to do some of those nursery rhymes, or even doing nursery rhymes like, you can do Incy Wincy Spider, and we're going to come, and I'm going to use my fingers to walk up your body as I'm singing. Using those nursery rhymes to just be a little bit playful and think about, okay, how could I add in a little bit of movement? Maybe we're holding hands together and we're shaking our arms as the rain falls down, or down in the rain, whatever it is. And whatever the nursery rhymes are that you love, there's always a way to tweak it. So nursery rhymes are great. And nursery rhymes are great for any stage, but at this sort of stage, we're really thinking about those really big affect, using your face, using your body, and just giving those little bits of movement where we can. Things like noisy toys, rattles are fantastic. This is where we can start to have some of that sound and movement. So I'm going to shake it, and we're going to look. Or it's going to drop and crash and you can hear the shake. Or giving it to your baby and maybe they shake, and you shake a different one. And then you go, oh, that was fun. And then you can tap them together or shake. As you're starting to look at encouraging rolling or encouraging crawling or these things, you can have the toy on the side and shaking it to get that attention and help that child start to turn their body and move themselves around, because it's motivating to get that toy. Looking at those little rattles and things that can go around feet as well can be great to bring some awareness to the fact that, hey, I have a leg and my leg can shake and do all this fun stuff as well. But yeah, rattles or noisy toys, or like a noisy ball that you can sit and you can roll it. Or maybe it falls off the table or falls off the couch or wherever you are, and you both laugh and go, oh, that's so silly. And you go and find it and you pick it up again and you shake it around and you roll it away, and then you have to go find it. That also starts to build a separate skill that kids start to develop through these stages called object permanence. And I'm just going to touch on it really quickly, just in case it's language that you've heard before. But object permanence is essentially the idea that if something is out of my sight, I know that it still exists. And so it's the idea of if something falls off the couch, I can look for it because I know that it's still there. I know that it still exists within this world. With peekaboo, when I can't see you anymore and I just see your hands, I know that you're still there. Or if you're hidden under a blanket, I know that you're still there and that you're coming back. Which then, peekaboo, also a great fun game at this stage, particularly if we can add lots of tickles and that really big affect and that silliness to it as well. The other thing that's really nice to build in at this stage is lots of anticipation-based play. And so looking at, if you're doing a tickle game, you're going to go, and we're going to give that little bit of anticipation, that little bit of time before I then go in and give the tickles. Or if we're doing a rocking game, we're going to rock and rock and rock and rock and rock. And I'm using my voice and I'm using my body to help facilitate that anticipation, but it's really fun. And you'll notice you end up smiling as well. It's a really easy thing to add into some of your play that will help make it a little bit more playful. But yeah, peekaboo is great. It helps build some of that object permanence. It's really great for that really big affect. And also it's really nice to start to build some of that interaction with somebody else and that real playfulness that comes of it. Where am I? I'm gone, add-a-boo, and gone, add-a-boo, and gone. And you'll notice a lot of this play can sound quite repetitive. But that's really important because we do it and we do it again and we do it again and we do it again and we start to figure it out. And so, you have your couple favorites that you can do as many times as you want, and the ones that you really struggle with being repetitive with, that's okay too. Just do them as much as you can and swap it out for something else. If it's not feeling fun for you, large chance is it won't feel fun for your kid as well. And so if it's not the game for you, then just pull out a different one. There's so many different ways that we can make these things playful. And maybe peekaboo with you hiding behind your hands isn't fun, but actually doing peekaboo with a little bit of fabric, well, that's great fun. So just be open to trying different things and seeing what some of those tweaks could be. Other ones that are great are some of those like crinkle toys that you can hold, but it doesn't have to be like a toy specifically. It can be anything. You could scrunch up a bit of paper. It could be some tissue paper. Obviously, we want to be watching that kids aren't mouthing too much and any choking hazard or things, but just that idea of being able to feel and scrunch different textures. And then as they get older, that moves into like feeling and scrunching food, feeling and scrunching sensory trays, like dry pasta is a really nice one because it makes a great sound. Starting to look at I lost my train of thought, but yeah, looking at the idea of starting to do some of these crinkle toys and then building up to sensory trays and food-based play and messy play and bath time and all of that is looking at how we start to figure out, this is what my fingers can do, and I can scrunch and I can grab and I can shake and I can let it go and I can scrunch it again, and just start to build some of that exploration as well. And it is mind-blowing how many times you can watch someone just sit there and scrunch and let go and scrunch and let go and maybe just listen to it and scrunch and let go. Other ones that I absolutely love playing at this stage, I love bubbles. Bubbles are great fun because bubbles we can just blow and watch. And again, you can build in a bit of that anticipation. Be like, what's coming? Ready, set. There's some more bubbles and we can pop and we can pop and pop and pop. Or we can blow them down so they come down onto their skin and they can feel them and go, that feels funny. And you can see naturally my voice goes up, and we want to really use ourselves to help facilitate that play, because really you could have all the toys in the world, but the best toy is you being playful and fun and engaging with your kid. That is the best toy possible. And so bubbles are just a really nice way to facilitate that and build in some of that anticipation, build in some of that waiting, that that we can start to then build from. What are some other games that I really like? Ball games. I love a ball. You can do so much with a ball. You can drop it and watch it bounce. You can roll it to each other. You can just throw it away and watch where it goes. You can throw it towards something as they get older. It can sit on your head and fall and crash. Like, there's just so much that you can do, and just allow yourself to be a little bit silly with it, with some of these open-ended toys. Same with cups and things. You start to have what we would call some of those bilateral skills. So again, go back and have a listen to the motor skills season. But little nesting cups, we're not looking at nesting them yet. We're not looking at stacking them yet, but we are looking at banging them, holding them, dropping them, rolling them, throwing them, all of that sort of early skills to look at, well, what can I do with this? And so then, like, it could be anything. It could be a container, and it could be that the container in your kitchen cupboard becomes the most interesting toy because I can bang that and I can, tap on that, and those kind of, I can, if I have the strength, I can pull open the lid and then I can bang the lid around and I can put it on my head, and all of that sort of early play and get in. And if you're really struggling with what to do as an adult and how to enter into some of this play, watch what your kid does and see where we can copy. See where you can go, okay, we're banging on the lid. All right, I'm going to bang on the lid too. Or, okay, we're banging these two things together. Okay, I'm going to do that too. And then as you start to engage in that, we'll go, okay, what's one tiny little change that I could make? Could my change be that I'm going to wait 2 more seconds before I bang them together again, or even 1 more second before I bang them together again? Could my change be that instead of banging them together, I'm going to put them on my fingers, and I'm going to have them like 5 little frogs on my fingers, or 5 little hats on my fingers? And then maybe we could sing a nursery rhyme about 5 little somethings that falling off. That's kind of the progression that I encourage parents to start to think through. Is that, okay, so like, where are we starting, and what else could I do with this? What's a tiny little tweak that could make this slightly different? And then playing around in that space, because I guarantee the number of times that I use a toy for its intended purpose versus the number of times I use a toy for very much not the intended purpose. And it was always the times that I'm not using it for its intended purpose that it ends up being some really great, fun, playful game that I just could not have thought about until I was in the moment and doing something. You know, I've had sessions where, I had a session once with 2 parents and the kid. One parent stepped out to, I think he had a phone call he had to take or something. Can't quite remember. Anyway, when he walks back into the session, it was bubbles, by the way. Before he walked out, we were playing bubbles. And when he walked back in, I had one of those like see-through scarf things that you can throw up. I had one of those over my head. I still had the bubble wand, but we were now banging it against each other's bubble wand. And then if the child hit mine 2 times in a row, I would fall and the scarf would fall off my head. And the dad's looking at me and he's like, "You were doing bubbles. Like, how did you get here?" And so I talked him through it. I'm like, yep, we were playing bubbles, but then what became really interesting was the in and out of the bubble wand into the mixture. And so then we started playing around with that. And so then I screwed that back on and made sure it was tight and gave it to the kid to be able to explore. And she was kind of tipping it and washing the swish, swish as the water. And so I got one and copied. And then she pulled out the scarf. So we played with that for a bit, but then she went back to which is why it ended up on my head. And then she went back to the bubble wand and then swish, swish, swish. And so then, and then I tapped mine against hers. And then she thought that was really funny. And so we banged them together again and we banged them together again. And that's the progression. And I talked the dad through that in terms of I noticed what was interesting for her. So we followed that. And then I just tweaked it a little bit and tweaked it a little bit. And then all of a sudden it makes sense as to why he's walking back in the room and we're playing with bubble wands like they're lightsabers and I've got something over my head. You know, you just got to go with it. And the more that you can kind of let your guard down, let your barriers down and give yourself permission to be as silly as you possibly can, the easier a lot of this play is going to be. You know, as the kids start to get maybe a little bit older, this is where you can start to do things like tunnels and crawling through tunnels, crawling over cushions and crashing into cushions, all of that sort of gross motory type play where, you know, climbing over something, rolling down something, crashing into something, tickle based play, all of that stuff is great fun in this stage as well. But really what I want you to remember when you're looking at this sort of, if you think your kid's in this sort of solitary sensorimotor play area and stage, really think about, okay, so how can I make sure that we're giving lots and lots of input in this activity? Are we doing lots of movement? Are we doing a bit of singing in there? Are we doing some things that are going to feel funny and feel like different textures? Are we going to do things with lots of sound? Are we going to do things that have lots of colours or lights and those sorts of things? And now you can see, I didn't actually talk about many toys that had lights, but they can be a really nice one as well, particularly with some of that early attention, because it's going to help shift that focus and help bring that attention to then be motivating to move my body around as well. And so you can see there's just so much you can do in this play stage. And if you have any questions or want any more ideas of what play could look like, just send me a message over Instagram's probably the easiest, but Instagram or Facebook, whatever works. And I'm more than happy to reach out with some more ideas for you and share some more ideas. But really what I want you to be a big take home from today is really thinking about, three big take homes. Number 1, give yourself permission to be silly, because this play is silly play. It really is at its truest form. It's exploring silly play. So give yourself permission to be silly. Number 2, give yourself permission to follow your child's lead, because the more that we go with a plan around, this is what we're going to play today, particularly in this stage, it's just going to be so much harder for you. Whereas if you go in and go, we've got, whatever the object is, and let's see what we can do with it. Roll it over to your kid, and if they start to bang it, bang on it too. If they start to shake it too. Follow their lead, and that will really help start to build your confidence. And number 3, just in the back of your mind, remember that this sort of stage of play is all around exploring the world around them and exploring how themselves and their bodies work to then be able to interact in the world around them. So think about, and if it's helpful, go back to kind of the motor development season and think about, what motor movements are they starting to explore? Are they starting to figure out their arms? In which case, great, let's play some games where we can shake our arms, or maybe on our tummy we're going to push up through our arms to reach for something. Are they starting to explore their legs? In which case, if, they're starting to pull to stand and wanting to do some of those jumping games, great, we can facilitate that. Watching what your child's interested in. And if it's rolling, great, let's do some rolling to some fun toys that we can bang on or crash, or, the list is endless. But just in the back of your mind, be thinking about the fact that this is all about your child starting to explore how their body works, and then how they can use their body to start to interact and explore everything in the world around them. And that's everything from the physical objects, the sounds, the lights, all of those things that we start to then interact with as humans as well. So that's going to be the end of that episode for today. And I'm just going to check quickly what was on my plan to chat through next time, so you guys know. So next time we'll start to look about like a little bit of onlooker or parallel play. And this is where we start to get into some of our symbolic, so like our cause and effect play as well. So it'll be a bit of a longer episode next time, I suspect. But yeah, as I said, if you have any questions, guys, if you have any concerns, if you have anything at all, shoot me a message. I'm here to help. But I really hope that gave you an understanding of the why behind some of those early play skills, and then what some activities or some ideas are that you can go and have fun. So enjoy, have the best time, and I'll chat to you soon. Have a great week, guys. Bye.